The afternoon rain on Vespera fell in curtains of silver, each droplet catching the light of the planet's twin suns, before splashing against the transparent dome that protected Celestial Ridge Colony. Owen Torres stood at the edge of the agricultural center's outdoor terrace, watching the water cascade down the energy barrier that separated the cultivated gardens from the wild plains beyond. He'd been on Vespera for 8 months now, and the rain still mesmerized him. On Earth, rain had been predictable, almost mundane. Here, it arrived with theatrical precision every afternoon at 1400 hours. As regular as clockwork, lasting exactly 47 minutes before evaporating into mist. Owen adjusted the strap of his tool bag and turned toward the school, building adjacent to the agricultural center. The irrigation system for their educational garden had now functioned again, and the teacher had specifically requested him. Something about Owen's gentle demeanor made him the preferred technician when children were involved. The school's courtyard was empty, the students all inside for afternoon lessons. Or so he thought. As he approached the garden beds, movement caught his eye near the far corner where a small covered pavilion offered shelter from the rain. A little girl sat alone in a specialized mobility chair, her face pressed close to the transparent barrier, watching the rain with an intensity that made Owen pause. Her skin held the distinctive lavender hue of the Valarian people, and her hair was a striking combination of black roots that faded into silver tips, falling in loose waves past her shoulders. She wore a simple blue dress, and her thin legs were tucked beneath a soft blanket, despite the warm air. Owen had seen her before during his regular maintenance visits. She was always alone, always watching. The other children played and ran and shouted, but this girl remained still, her large amber eyes following their movements with quiet longing. He should focus on his work. The irrigation system wouldn't fix itself. But something about the loneliness in her posture pulled at him, reminded him of his own childhood as the awkward kid who preferred plants to people. Owen changed direction, walking toward the pavilion. The girl didn't notice him at first, too absorbed in watching the rain. Up close, he could see that her mobility chair was old, probably third-hand, with scuff marks and faded paint. The hover mechanism hummed unevenly, suggesting it needed calibration. Pretty spectacular, isn't it? Owen said softly, not wanting to startle her. The girl's head snapped toward him, her amber eyes widening. For a moment, she looked ready to flee, if fleeing had been possible. Instead, she shrank back slightly in her chair. "I'm sorry," Owen said quickly, crouching down so he was at her eye level. "I didn't mean to scare you. I'm Owen. I work with the plants here." The girl studied him carefully, her expression guarded. "I know who you are. You make things grow." Her voice was quiet, musical in the way Valerian voices often were, but with a slight rasp that suggested she didn't use it often. "That's right," Owen smiled. "What's your name?" "Myra." She paused, then added, "Mira-chun." "Well, Myra-chun, do you like the rain?" She nodded, a small smile ghosting across her face. "On my mother's homeworld, it never rains. The water comes from underground springs, and everything is dry and dusty. But here," she gestured toward the falling water, "here it's like the sky is crying happy tears." Owen felt something in his chest tighten at her words. "That's a beautiful way to describe it. My teacher says I should play with the others instead of sitting alone," Mira said, the smile fading. "But I can't run like them. My chair doesn't work very well on the grass, and I'm slow, and they don't want to wait for me." "Have you told your teacher that?" Mira shook her head. "I don't want to be a bother. Mother says I should be grateful I have a chair at all. Some children don't even have that." Owen looked at the mobility chair again, noting the way it stuttered slightly when Myra adjusted her position. An idea began forming in his mind. He worked with plants, yes, but before he'd specialized in botany, He'd studied engineering. His father had been a mechanic, and Owen had spent his teenage years elbow-deep in machinery. "Myra, would it be okay if I looked at your chair? I might be able to help it work better." Suspicion flickered across her face. "Why would you do that?" "Because I think everyone deserves to move freely," Owen said simply. "And because I have some ideas that might help." "You're not going to break it, are you? Mother saved for 3 years to buy it." "I promise I won't break it. I'll only make adjustments if you say it's okay first. Deal?" Mira considered this for a long moment, her small hands fidgeting with the edge of her blanket. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but only if you tell me about earth plants. My teacher says Earth has thousands of different flowers." "Tens of thousands," Owen corrected with a grin. "And I'd be happy to tell you about them." He spent the next 15 minutes examining her chair while telling her about roses, orchids, and sunflowers. Mira listened with rapt attention, asking questions that showed a sharp, curious mind. The irrigation system could wait another day. "The hover calibration is off," Owen explained, "and the power distribution is uneven. That's why it struggles on uneven surfaces. I can't fix it completely right now, but I can make some adjustments that should help." "Will it hurt?" "The chair? No. It might tickle a little when I recalibrate the hover plates, but that's all." With Myra's permission, Owen pulled out his portable toolkit and began making minor adjustments. He explained each step, showing her how the mechanisms worked. Pleased when she leaned forward with interest instead of fear. 20 minutes later, he'd managed to improve the hover stability by 30% and rebalance the power distribution. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. "Try moving forward," he suggested. Myra pushed the control stick, and her chair glided forward smoothly, no longer stuttering or dipping. Her face lit up with delight. "It's so much better." "Thank you." "You're welcome." "But Myra, this is just temporary. The chair needs proper servicing, maybe even some replaced parts." Her smile dimmed. "Mother works very hard. I don't want to ask for more." Owen's heart ached at the resignation in her voice. No child should have to worry about being a financial burden. He made a decision then, one that would change the trajectory of his carefully planned, solitary life. "What if I built you something better?" he asked. "In my free time, using recycled parts from the agricultural center. Would you let me try?" Myra stared at him as if he'd offered her the moons. "You would do that? For me?" "For you," Owen confirmed. "But I'd need your help. I'd need you to test things and tell me what works and what doesn't. Think you can handle that job?" "Yes." Myra's whole face transformed with her smile. "Yes, I can do that." The school bell chimed, signaling the end of the rain and the start of afternoon recess. Children began flooding into the courtyard, their voices rising in excited chatter. "I should let you get back to your class," Owen said, standing up. "Will you come back?" Myra asked, worry creeping into her voice. "Will you really come back?" Owen looked down at this small, hopeful girl who'd spent too much time watching life from the sidelines, and he felt something shift inside him. He'd come to Vespera to escape complications, to lose himself in the simple work of making things grow. But maybe that wasn't what he needed after all. "I'll come back tomorrow," he promised. "Same time. And I'll bring some seed samples to show you. We can plant something together while I take more measurements for your new chair. Really?" "Really." As Owen walked back toward the irrigation system he was supposed to be fixing, he heard Mira call out behind him. "Owen? Thank you for talking to me. No one usually does." He turned back, giving her a warm smile. "Get used to it, Myra. I have a feeling we're going to be good friends." The rain had stopped, but Myra continued to smile. And Owen realized that for the first time since arriving on Vespera, he felt truly needed. Not as a botanist or a technician, but as a person who'd chosen to see another person struggle and do something about it. Tomorrow, he'd start designing her new mobility system. Tonight, he'd figure out how to make a little girl's world bigger, one innovation at a time. Owen's small apartment in the residential quarter was cluttered with sketches by the time midnight arrived. Half-finished diagrams covered his table, the floor, even the kitchen counter. He'd barely touched the reheated meal sitting cold beside his workstation, too absorbed in designing the perfect mobility system for Mira. The challenge wasn't just making something that worked. It needed to be built from components he could access without raising questions or costs. The agricultural center had a surprising amount of useful equipment: hover mechanisms from automated harvesting drones, lightweight alloy frames from retired greenhouse structures, power cells from old irrigation pumps. He could do this. He would do this. His communicator chimed at 0630 earlier than expected. Owen fumbled for it, nearly knocking over his cold coffee. "Torres here. Mr. Torres?" The voice was feminine, melodic with the characteristic harmonics of a Valerian speaker. "This is Naya Chun. I apologize for the early contact. Mira told me what you did for her chair yesterday, and I wanted to speak with you before my shift begins." Owen sat up straighter, suddenly very aware that he was unshaven and wearing yesterday's shirt. "Of course, Miss Chun. Is everything all right? Could we meet? Perhaps at the Sunrise Gardens in 20 minutes? I promise not to take much of your time." 20 minutes later, Owen found himself walking through the colony's central garden, a communal space where bioluminescent plants from a dozen worlds created a tapestry of soft light in the pre-dawn darkness. He spotted her immediately. Naya Chun stood beneath a flowering viridian tree, its blue blossoms casting gentle shadows across her face. She was taller than her daughter, willowy and graceful, with the same lavender skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Her hair was pure silver, intricately braided and wound into an elegant style that spoke of time and care. She wore practical clothes, a fitted jacket over slim pants, but carried herself with natural dignity. "Mr. Torres," she said as he approached, offering the traditional Valerian greeting, one hand placed over her heart and a slight bow. "Please, call me Owen." He returned the gesture awkwardly, not quite sure he'd done it right. A small smile touched her lips. "Owen, then. And I'm Naya." She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. "Myra came home yesterday, happier than I've seen her in months. She talked for an hour straight about plants and flowers and a kind human who fixed her chair and promised to build her something better." "I hope that's okay," Owen said quickly. "I should have asked your permission first. I just saw her sitting there alone, and you showed my daughter kindness when others walked past her without a second glance." Naya interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what that means to me." Owen noticed the way her hands trembled slightly, the exhaustion evident in the set of her shoulders, despite her composed exterior. "Myra mentioned you work in agricultural coordination?" He ventured. "Yes, I manage crop rotation schedules and nutrient distribution across the colony's growing sectors." She gestured vaguely toward the sprawling greenhouse complexes visible in the distance. "It's demanding work, especially for a single parent." Myra said something about saving for 3 years for her chair. Naya's expression tightened. "The medical system here is adequate for common ailments, but specialized equipment for mobility challenges, ... She trailed off. "The costs are significant. Mira was born with a condition that affects nerve development in her lower body. On Villaria, there are treatments, therapies that might help. But here, on a frontier colony, our options are limited." "What about Earth?" "They have advanced neurological treatment facilities. The journey alone would cost more than I earn in 2 years," Naya said softly. And that's before considering the treatment itself. I've looked into every possibility, Owen. I've applied for medical grants, contacted charity organizations, even reached out to the Valerian embassy. The answers are always the same. Insufficient funds, long waiting lists. Try again next year. The pain in her voice was palpable. The helplessness of a mother, unable to provide what her child needed most. Myra told me you offered to build her a new mobility system, Naya continued, using recycled parts in your spare time, asking nothing in return. I need to understand why. People don't usually do things without expecting something. Owen met her amber eyes, so similar to Myra's, but carrying the weight of years of struggle. I don't have some noble reason or hidden agenda. I saw a lonely kid watching the rain, and I remembered what it felt like to be on the outside looking in. I have skills that can help, and resources I can access. Why wouldn't I use them? Because most people wouldn't, Naya said simply. They'd see the complexity, the time investment, the potential liability. They'd offer sympathy and move on. I'm not most people. No, she agreed, studying him with an intensity that made him feel suddenly transparent. You're not. They walked in silence for a moment, following the winding path through gardens that showcased flora from across the settled galaxy. A night-blooming Tehran jasmine released its perfume into the air, mixing with the sweet scent of Valerian moonflowers. If you're serious about building something for Myra, Naya said carefully, I want to help. I can't pay you what it's worth, but I can offer my time, my labor. I'm good with my hands, and I understand mechanical systems from working with agricultural equipment. Naya, I don't want payment. Then let me contribute, she insisted. Let me be part of creating something for my daughter instead of just accepting charity. Please. The pride in her voice, the need to maintain dignity while accepting help, resonated with Owen. He understood that kind of fierce independence. All right, he agreed, but only if you let me teach you about Earth engineering principles while we work. Cultural exchange, purely educational. A genuine smile broke across her face, transforming her from a worried parent into someone younger, lighter. I accept those terms. They made arrangements to meet in Owen's workshop behind the agricultural center 3 evenings a week. Naya would bring Mira for measurements and testing, and they'd work together on the design. There's one more thing, Naya said as they prepared to part ways, the twin suns beginning to crest the horizon. Myra doesn't make friends easily. She's been disappointed too many times by children who lose interest when they realize she can't keep up. If you're going to be part of her life, please mean it. Don't let her hope and then disappear. I won't, Owen promised, and meant it. That afternoon, Owen arrived at the school courtyard with a small bag of seed samples and a portable planting kit. Myra was already waiting in her usual spot, but this time her face lit up the moment she saw him. You came back, she exclaimed. I promised, didn't I? Owen settled onto the ground beside her chair, spreading out his collection of seeds. Now, I brought some special ones today. This tiny one is from a flower called forget-me-not. On Earth, people plant them to remember important moments. Myra picked up the minuscule seed carefully, examining it with wonder. Something so small can become a flower? With the right care, time, and patience, absolutely. Want to plant some? They spent the next hour working on a small garden bed near the pavilion. Owen showed Myra how to prepare the soil, space the seeds properly, and mark what they'd planted. Other children occasionally glanced over with curiosity, but none approached. Why forget-me-not? Myra asked as they watered their new garden. Because I don't want to forget the day we met, Owen said simply. The day I saw a girl brave enough to watch the rain alone and smart enough to ask good questions about flowers. Myra's eyes grew shiny with unshed tears. No one's ever said I was brave before. Then they haven't been paying attention. Over the following weeks, a routine developed. Owen would visit during afternoon recess, working on Myra's garden with her, while taking measurements and notes for her new mobility system. In the evenings, Naya would come to his workshop, and they'd work side by side on the design. Those evening sessions became something Owen looked forward to with increasing anticipation. Naya was brilliant, grasping engineering concepts quickly and offering insights from her agricultural work that improved his designs. But more than that, she was easy to talk to, quick to laugh, and surprisingly playful once she relaxed. "You're welding that joint wrong," she teased one evening, leaning over his shoulder to point out the flaw. Says the woman who tried to install the power coupling backward last week. Owen shot back, grinning. "That was a test. I was testing your attention to detail." "Sure you were." Their banter felt natural, comfortable. Owen found himself sharing stories about his childhood on Earth, about his father's garage where he'd learned to build things, about the heartbreak that had driven him to seek work on a distant colony. Naya, in turn, told him about Valaria, about her traditional family who'd rejected her when she'd chosen to partner with a human, about Myra's father who'd left when he realized their daughter wouldn't be perfect. His loss was incalculable. Owen said quietly one evening as they took a break, sitting on the workshop floor with cups of tea. "Mira is extraordinary. So is her mother," he thought but didn't say. "Not yet. Some beings can't handle imperfection," Naya replied, staring into her cup. "They see disability as failure, rather than simply another way of being. Then they're fools." Naya looked up at him, something warm and searching in her gaze. "You're nothing like him, you know." "Nothing like any man I've known. Is that good or bad?" "Good," she said softly. "Definitely good." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities neither seemed quite ready to voice. Owen became acutely aware of how close they were sitting, of the way the workshop's dim lighting caught the silver in her hair, of the graceful line of her neck. Naya broke the spell first, clearing her throat and standing up. "We should finish the joint calibration before it gets too late. Myra will wonder where I am." But as they returned to work, their hands brushed more frequently than necessary, and their smiles lingered longer. Something was growing between them, as patient and inevitable as the seeds in Mira's garden. A month after their first meeting, Owen unveiled the new mobility system. It wasn't just a chair. It was a marvel of integrated engineering. Built from repurposed agricultural equipment, it featured advanced hover technology, all-terrain capability, and a streamlined design that looked modern rather than medical. "Myra, want to try it?" Owen asked, his stomach tight with nervous anticipation. With Naya's help, they transferred Mira into the new seat. The girl's hands trembled as she touched the controls. "Just like before," Owen encouraged. "Forward, back, turn. But now you've got altitude control too. This button lifts you higher. This one brings you down." Myra pushed forward, and the chair responded instantly, gliding across the workshop floor with perfect smoothness. She laughed, the sound pure joy, and pushed harder, zipping across the space and executing a perfect turn. "I'm flying," she shouted. "Owen, I'm really flying." Naya's hand found Owen's, squeezing tight. When he looked at her, tears were streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving her this." "We built it together," Owen reminded her. "No," Naya said, turning to face him fully. "You gave us both something more than a chair. You gave us hope. You gave us someone who sees us, really sees us, and doesn't look away." In that moment, with Myra's laughter filling the workshop and Naya's hand warm in his, Owen realized he'd found something he hadn't known he was missing: a family. Not by blood or tradition, but by choice and care and the quiet courage of showing up every day. "Can we test it outside?" Mira called, already heading toward the door. "Tomorrow," Owen promised. "Tomorrow we'll take it to the schoolyard, and you can show everyone what you can do." As they left the workshop, Myra zooming ahead in her new chair, while Owen and Naya walked behind, their hands still linked. The twin suns setting over Vespera painted the sky in shades of amber and violet. Seeds had been planted. Roots were taking hold, and something beautiful was beginning to bloom.